Arnold Taylor says Cruz. En abika teledigo lidoet. En amilegida katsolgida. Abika telediga indestanagidoet. Vas. Naja indestanagimagayat. Ja hariangi Mikko. Alizet jaar. Inokkede dozetsen. Doorsaarin halatnoon. Han gör att Mikko måste lägga den så här hodet. Och palkaa diusin mantokuudet. Men diusin nog lägga den. You know, my name is Arnold Taylor, and I come from Abika. I belong to that grounds. My position down there is Destanagi, which is the third person in command. But due to the sickness of our Mikko, they put me in place of the Mikko. We call it borrowing from one of the arbors. In my particular position, they borrowed me to sit in place of the Mikko. I was born and raised in Okmulgee, but spent my childhood at Arbika. And I come from a very fluent family. My mother didn't speak Creek. My father spoke what you call broken English. And he only had a third grade education. And my mother didn't go to school at all. So I come from a background where we all spoke Creek. And that was our main language. Being at the ceremonial grounds teaches you a lot of respect for nature, teaches you a lot of respect for people. And through that, I try to practice that through my life. And we try to stay humble. We try to respect people. And that was our way of life. And being at the ceremonial grounds, that's what they say, you know, that's our way of life. And that's the way we were taught. That's how we were brought up. And growing up in Okmulgee, we lived in a house that my grandmother owned, and we had several family members that lived there, and most of the people spoke Creek. And we as kids, we spoke it all the time. Then going into school, it was a rough start. We had hard times, you know, trying to pick up the English language. But eventually we did. But we maintained our language. Anytime we were at home, we spoke the language. We were at school, we spoke English. And that way we were able to combine the two languages. I know a lot of times I look across, when I'm at the ceremonial grounds, I'll look across and look at all these young guys that's sitting under the arbors, you know. They're out there speaking English. And I keep thinking to myself that at some point, the language is going to be lost. And that's what it's leading up to today. They know the language, they understand the language, but they don't speak it. And that's a real sad situation, because there's some portions in our ceremonials that requires the language. And if these young people don't know the language, then who's going to carry on? How are they going to carry on? Will the grounds be around? Yeah. Our elders predicted that a long time ago. You know, they used to tell us that at some point that all the grounds are going to be gone. And you look at it today, there's only very few grounds remaining. And Arbica is one of the few remaining grounds that came from Alabama. I look at it and it hurts me inside that one day that this will be lost. You just have to hope that, maybe someone will pick up the language and keep it going. I know Creek Nation started all these Creek classes, which is good. It's very good.
About how many elders do you think you know, or like other people who were, Mvskoke first language speakers? How many do you think, or how many do you know, just kind of off the top of your head too, how many do you know, that are still with us?
Down at the ceremonial grounds, there was only about 4 of us left.
Really?
That's myself, the medicine man. We've got a speaker, and we have 2 warriors out there that know the language, that speak the language. And here recently, we lost one of our elders, you might say. He was much younger than me. He knew the language, and he was becoming a speaker out there. And I encouraged him to continue on, but as life goes, he lost his life to cancer. I don't know, I guess we're just being hopeful at this point where younger people will come back, try to do something about it. But there's not very many left.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get programs going and get people committed and things like that. We got all these great resources. These nice buildings,
right,
and all this equipment, and it helps, but we need people to get involved.
Yeah. Some of these younger people we get involved with the language, and again, hopefully they would come back to the ceremonial grounds and continue what our elders started. I mean, this was given to us by our Creator, and we got to keep it up. keep it going.
Yeah. So you said growing up, you know, if you don't mind, you know, how old are you?
I will be 70 years old next month, in January.
So you said you grew up in Okmulgee, or you born in?
I was born and raised in Mvskoke.
What was that? Did you live in town, like where the?
No, we lived right outside of town. My grandmother had a house out there. It was like a 4-bedroom house. And from what I've heard, it used to be a bar. One of these swinging places. But she made her homestead out there in that house. And like I said, there were several families that lived there. I mean, we had mom and dad, had us there. Then there would be people from Mvskoke, you know, that come to live there too. They would live there 3 or 4 months, something like that, then they'd move on.
Yeah.
But
What was the Creek Nation like at that time?
at the time, the nation was pretty much non-existent back then, in my time. You know, like the government services they provide today, you know, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And
So no complex or?
no complex. All they had was the Creek Nation courthouse, is it in Mvskoke?
Okay, yeah.
They had that, and they didn't use that place that much.
Did your parents ever talk about Creek Nation and maybe like the kind of like the politics, you know, like the chiefs or the council? Did they ever talk about that, like their experiences?
You know, back then, it was pretty much kept to themselves. You know, growing up, they too would look at their youngsters, young people, and they'll have in their mind who they want to be the next leader, I guess you might say. And they'd look up to my brother. I guess I was too wild or something. But they'd pick somebody out and he'd get to listen in on all that stuff, you know. And the rest of the kids, you know, they just run around. And that's how my brother was handpicked to be the medicine man. You know, he had no idea, I had no idea. You know, they just look at the person's personality. But growing up back then, they didn't think about stuff like that, you know, the Creek Nation government.
So as you said, the tribe was pretty much non-existent. So pretty much all of the, I guess, like the leadership or politics, I mean, you know, primarily leadership or even services maybe, you know, probably came from the ceremonial grounds or the churches, right?
Yeah, it
Like
came from the
somebody-
ceremonial grounds, because each grounds, you know, as you know, during the winter months, we have our little fundraisers like that. That was going on back then, back when I was growing up. And they'd have fundraisers outside the ceremonial grounds, you know, and all that money came back to the ceremonial grounds. And
So if somebody needed something, then they would
oh yeah,
bring it to the leadership of the grounds.
when you talk about the grounds, it's like one big family. You know, you have all these campgrounds. Most of your people that live outside the grounds, you know, if they needed help or something like that, they'll put it out. And the grounds would come together and help this family out. That's the way it was.
That must have been really, really interesting, because nowadays we got social media and cell phones and all this kind of, for communication. What was that like? When you say put it out there, what was that like?
It was pretty much like by word of mouth. One family will say something, take it back. If family needed help, they would put the word out, and somebody would come along and say, hey, Arnold Taylor's family needs help, and can we get together and find some way to help them? And that's what they would do. They'd pick a weekend or something like that, and help that family out. And like I said, we're all one big family down there. If you got problems, you bring your problems to the grounds, and people will try to solve that problem. And that's what it was all about.
Well, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit, just because I'm curious and just interested. Who was the chief? Do you remember any of the chiefs?
The chief back then was my dad.
Your dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad was the chief. Before him, it was George Thompson Sr. And he drowned in the Canadian River. When that happened, they put my dad up there as a replacement. Like I was saying a while ago, borrow from one of the arbors.
Yeah.
That's what they did with my dad.
Okay.
And he was bringing them along, and finally it came that time when they had to decide who they wanted put up there permanently. And the council decided that, he's brought us this far, let's go ahead and put him on there permanently.
Yeah.
And so that's how my dad ended up as the chief dinner. And
What was your dad's name?
my dad's name was Lewis Taylor. He was Deer Clan. And of course my mother's a Tiger Clan. Speaking along that lines, how you got your clanship is whatever your mother's clan is. My mother's Tiger Clan, so I'm Tiger. And Tisholegat, Chuolgiden, Deer Clan. Follow my dad's clan. Instead of giving me a Tiger's name, they decided to give me my dad's clan and put me in this certain arbor, because that certain arbor didn't have any workers, didn't have that many workers, so they put us there at the Dustinagis. Ladies and Mogi showdu horde dun idleire mahawat stitch itchkimen ayin rakayin maktok horde dun moina in leire anhagden gatsolge.
Talk to the younger generation, people coming out of high school, maybe college. What would you tell them about language and culture and things like that?
My plea to them would be, now that the nation is set up with the language, go learn the language. Because that's the most important thing. And I feel like in our times that is the most important thing. Take advantage of all these classes that they're having. Because they're going to be the ones to continue on with these other grounds like Arvika, Hicker Ground, Fish Pond. They're the ones going to, younger generations are the ones going to take over. And if they don't know the language, then so goes the ceremonial grounds. And that's a really sad situation.
What would you say to our tribal leaders about language?
I would tell them to implement excuse me, implement more classes. Because all we have now is, that I know of, is the one at Mvskoke Nation College. I don't know of anyone else that's having classes.
We had them like at noon before the sickness hit, for an hour every day. We were doing that for about 2 years. We was getting pretty good responses from people, and people were picking it up. We had the language camp over in up towards Wagner, excuse me. And those kids, they can pick it right up. You talk to them for a week, it seems like they retain it. They can remember the prayers, basic conversation, the repetitiveness, over and over and over, and they get it, so.
Yeah.
I agree with you about the classes,
What do you think the best way to teach and learn the language?
Repetition. That's how we had to learn. Our parents spoke to us, and we learned to converse right back to them. And if you don't have anyone to talk to, then you're not going to pick it up. It's harder to pick up if you're not using it every day.
Have you ever been to one of the classes, or have you ever seen?
I've never been into one.
You've never been to one?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I can read it,
You can read, okay, yeah.
but to actually spell the words and like stuff like that,
Just speak it out,
Just-
yeah.
hard for me to do.
Is it? Yeah. So, and so you just grew up speaking Creek, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
When I was growing up in Okmulgee, like I said, we had all these families that lived together, and all the kids that hung around each other. Shoot, there'd be, I don't know, 8, 10 kids at one time. And at one time, we all be talking the language. And it was a growing experience. On the weekends, that load us up in the back of the truck and take us down to Arvika. And there were times we would stay down Arvika for a whole week. It wasn't like nowadays where people have to go to work. back then there was very little work, you know. I mean, all these men were farmers. And so they'd load us up and take us down to our beacon. We'd be down there all week, you know, with all these people talking the language. Those were the good times. Times change and you have to change with it. Some things get...
Did y'all go visit other grounds?
Yeah, we go visit other grounds like Hickory Ground. Whenever they had their dance, they'd notify the chief and invite us out. And we'd go out there and dance with them. New Yorker. They'd invite us out. We'd go out there and just, you know, by word of mouth, you know, let's say Arbeca's dancing this weekend, we'd like for y'all to come participate. And that's how it was.
Think you could be a teacher, a language teacher?
It'd be hard for me to do. Like I said, it'd be hard to
Well, no,
write.
I mean,
You know?
not even messing with that portion of it, just, you know, just speaking it, you know, kind of how you learned it, you know, just.
Speaking
yeah,
to the
just speaking it, you know, I feel like that's the best way to learn it, you know, is to get away from all that reading and writing and portion of it, let's just speak it, you know.
And we're in.
That stuff will come later, you know, I mean, you know, I think that's needed to have it written because, you know, that's the government, you know, that they want everything
Mhm.
documented and, you know, we gotta know how to play their game, and that's part of it, but, you know, to begin teaching it, I feel like we need to put all that stuff aside and just speak it and hear it, just like you said, repetitive, you know, just over and over, we need to hear, you know, conversation, and,
Mhm.
you know, just things like that.
Yeah.
That's what, I feel like that's what we need is, you know, maybe even matching somebody up, you know, like a first language speaker, an elder, and then somebody who may have sort of that technical knowledge of the reading and writing to kind of put them together, you know, to start teaching classes.
Mhm.
When I was in Santa Fe one year, we went to a language symposium, and there was a gentleman there from, I want to say England, somewhere with a European guy. And he was telling us, he was a linguist, he was telling us what it takes to learn a language you've never heard before, and to learn it and to speak it. And what he said was, it's going to take you 2,000 hours to do that. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for a year. That's what he said. And somebody had raised their hand and said, well, how's that possible? People need to work, and they got things, and family and things. And this little old lady rose her hand and she said, I'll tell you how. And she was from upstate New York, and she was Mohawk. She goes, I'll tell you how. She said, you pay them. She said they had gotten a settlement from some oil company that ruined their forest, and they took this money and hired 4 teachers, and each teacher got 4 students, so 16. And they projected a 4-year plan for this pilot program. And once they got the ball rolling and worked out all the problems, they produced a speaker in 10 months. And so they went from no new speakers. In 10 months, they had 16. And after that, they were projecting 4 years. So they quadrupled their number in 4 years,
Mhm.
you know. And I think if we want to, like Dr. Randall was mentioning, pair them up with speakers and students, I think it's going to have to come to that. And that would be your job. This is your job. I'm going to pay you to teach these kids, and motivate his kids to listen to you. And his job is to listen and go back home and teach his family what he's heard at work
Mm-hmm.
and come back. And it's just like a job. If you're late, they dock you pay. If you miss a day, they don't pay you. If you act up, they fire you. It's like a real job. That was their job. And that's what that lady in upstate New York said. She said, and this is how we were successful. So what do you think about something like that? Is that too much?
That sounds like a good idea. Trying to teach over a class of 15, 20 people, it'd be hard. But to take, like you said, 4 or 5 people at a time and just sit down and talk to these people, they would pick it up faster. Because it's almost like individual teaching, I think a program like that would work. But it's going to be up to the individuals that want to learn.
Yeah.
Was it at the Hanui? Meses grann keer bij een bohas kan gaan. Maar dat is Japans gestuurd. Nagin istaugi kitli yazagat. Naksul girat ozedunda. Istibin taugi Induagahan dudda. If it comes to me talking about kids talking to be dad and duation. Istiman it dogi babet. In Hossagi Bagagidai. Kittir jatsagiga sashidun muish hilistilagen ma hoken at fullidun duation podangadat hanyo at dasungida yi marat stimitska tuhleiraten maakt ook voor de dongen. Wees. Niet dat ook zeggen dat zoals ik hoor, agit deze. Gaat aan vlakken op gehiskon, agit amagit deze kunnen, man leggen. At some point in our lifetime, I hope the younger generation realize that we are slowly losing grounds. It's not about going out and dancing and singing. There's much more to it than that. And these younger people have got to realize that. And the only way they can realize that is in my last few years here, hopefully I could convey that message. Hopefully that one of them will step up and try to do something about it. Man deus en ska säga det, vadå?
Vadå?